Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Tammy, brought to you by BK Nair Resources. As an extension of the Women of Essence series, in which inspiring women are brought in to conduct seminars for underprivileged women, Let's Talk features interesting personalities sharing bite sized insights on relevant topics. I'm Tammy, your host, a scientist at heart, a lecturer by profession, and Miss Sari Malaysia 2019. And I always look forward to learn from my guests every episode. So I hope you do too. So tonight we'll be talking about something that is pretty relevant, super relevant actually, to a lot of us. And we are discussing about the struggles of middle class women. And with us today, we have Dr. Sally Ann Param, lecturer, a dear colleague of mine, and a social geographer to share her insights with us. So I'm going to bring her in. Hello,
Hi,
Doctor.
hi everyone. Hello. Nice to meet
So
you
thank you
all.
so much for being on the show.
You're most welcome. This is so exciting for me because this is like something I've never done before in that sense. So, yeah. And
Okay. So before we start, I would really like to read your glowing profile to everyone so that they can know what are your accomplishments. Okay. So Dr. Sally actually has finished her PhD from University of Malaya in 2016, studying the urban identity of working women in Klang Valley. So her research passion as a social geographer is exploring how gender, age, ethnicity can make a difference in individuals' lived experiences. Dr. Sally's current engagement with urban identity is studying how young adult Malaysians deal with podcasting. So her two recent international publications are book chapters, also dealing with urban identity, women and their friendship. I think that's also a very interesting topic. And adolescents discussing their aspirations. Dr. Sally's paper studying travel motivations among Indian women won the best paper at the International Conference of Health-Oriented Tourism and Hospitality 2019. So when she's not doing research or working at a rice bowl job or pre-U uni teaching, Sally intentionally savors some guilty pleasures of life, like writing personal reflections in an obscure kopitiam. Sometimes she also brings in a friend and we chat for a while, and or enjoying some jalan-jalan in parks or shopping malls. So before we go into the first question, right, I think I would like to start with a quote that you quoted in your thesis, which I thought it's a perfect quote to like sum up what we are trying to talk about, which is a quote by Susan Faludi, in which she said, feminism's agenda is basic. It asks women to be free to define themselves. So I think
mm,
it is very important because I know we spoke about middle class women, and there are many choices taken by middle class women. So we're not going to undermine women who decide the struggles of women who decide to become full time housewives or
that's
who
right.
decide to pursue their career full time.
Mm,
We're just talking about a specific group of these middle class women who, through the heteronormative, socially accepted, socially expected way of, where you study, you get a job, you get
mm,
married, you have kids.
mm,
And when you have family and also career to look at, what are the struggles these women go through?
that's right.
Okay, so for the first question, I think I would like to get the technical words to be really properly defined first. So
Mm,
the first question would be, how would you define middle class? Like you decided to talk about middle class in your study,
mm,
right? So
yes.
why middle class and what is middle class?
Okay. I come from the premise that because I was looking at a particular ethnic group, I was looking at the Indians, even though I had to do research on like Chinese, Malay, like
Mm,
everyone in Malaysia. And because I was looking at the Indian community, most of the write ups were only about the B40 group. So,
okay.
the struggles that the B40 group faces, issues of poverty and
Mm,
things like that.
mm,
So, my supervisors told me that to be really clear, I need to look at a group of women that's perhaps not so much looked at. And,
okay.
they are, even though they are economically well, they have good jobs, they have good homes and everything like that, but their personal lives are not really looked at. I mean, we really don't know what's going on in the four walls of what we call home.
Mm,
So That's why I chose the middle class, and also because the middle class is the age. Oh, sorry, it's the group, the class group, where the government is focusing on. For example, like when they have policies or when they want to make any decisions, they want to
Mm.
put up certain acts or certain policies. They tend to look at how the middle class can carry that forward. So what
Right.
happens is, so in terms of like education, they want to see if the middle class can move forward. In terms of
Mm.
like economic plans, they want to see if the middle class can move forward. So they're always looking for ways that the middle class can carry the national vision forward, for example. So that
Okay.
would be the definition of middle class. Would you like to know the problems that a middle class faces in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah, definitely.
definition?
I think majority
Yeah.
of our viewers would also fall into the middle class segment.
Category.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So the simplistic definition is just M40. So just
Okay.
like B40 is for the lower class or the working
Mm.
class, so M40 would be for the middle class. But it's not so straightforward because the middle class also looks at the socio-economic amenities that we have. So, for example,
Okay.
if you want to send your kid to a good school, even if it's sekolah menengah or sekolah rendah, we're not talking about private schools or
Mm.
international schools. Even in a good government schools, that means you would be living in a place where these schools are. Okay, so
Okay.
if you're living in a place or in a suburb or in a neighborhood where perhaps the amenities are better, you have good restaurants, you have good neighborhood watches, you feel safe,
Mm.
things like that. So that would also be part of middle class. So that means, can you enjoy certain facilities or amenities which are available? So that would
Okay.
also put you in the middle class category. And if
Okay.
you have rich parents, okay, parents
Okay.
who have assets, like they've already
Right.
bought you a house, you haven't got
Okay.
married, but you already have a house in your name, and
Right.
getting a car is no problem. So that would also put you in the middle class.
Right.
And then, of course, even something that's very insignificant, we don't think about it, but actually if you study it, it's middle class. For example, if you know somebody who plays golf, or if you know
Right.
somebody who has a hobby of like horse riding,
Okay.
that person immediately is in the middle class category.
Oh, they are not T20, is it? Because I thought middle class would not
Yes,
be able to
they
afford
could be
the.
T20, but
Okay.
because the M40, thanks for that, because the M40 category is rather low because it's based on
Mm.
income per household, there
Mm.
are many people who are middle class but who happen to come into the T20 category. So that's why there's a bit of a
Right.
problem.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
middle class can be measured through income.
Mm.
Income is number one. Number two is, do you have access to the social facilities that are around you? And number three, culturally, do you engage in sports, or do you go like for fine dining, things like
Right.
that? In
Mm.
the UK, they have this thing called high culture, low culture. So
Right.
that also applies. See, it's not called high class or something like that, but the fact that you can go to a good restaurant and have a good
Mm.
meal, that would
Correct.
also categorize you in the middle class. So yeah, so
Okay.
those are the three main definitions. Actually, four. If you have assets, if your parents are rich and have bought you a house, you are also middle class. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So when you were selecting your sample, right? So when you're
Right.
doing a sampling, were you so did they like fulfill these criteria?
Yes,
Right.
they did.
Okay.
So
Okay.
mine was easy because I looked at the salary and the kind of job which they had. That's
Mm.
usually the easiest thing to look for. So the
Mm.
moment they and their husbands fell in that category, they are already middle class.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was quite easy. Yes.
Okay. And I think another word I think I would maybe the viewers who want to understand what it means as well is urban identity. What is
Thanks.
urban identity?
Okay. So actually, our colleague Jane would be a good one to answer this also. We have talked about this.
Okay.
Urban basically would mean living in the city, living
Right.
in a place that is not rural, living
Mm.
in a place that's like KL, Klang Valley, Ipoh. Okay, all these places are urban, right? So
Mm.
the identities of people in an urban environment is a little bit different than those who live in the rural area. Again, we are not um, we're not trying to condescend, not trying to like label, oh, if you're living in the city, that means you're this type. And then if you're
Correct.
living in the rural area, that type. We're not trying to do that. But
Correct.
what we're trying to say is that if you live in the city, there are certain things which are peculiar to city life. There are certain
Right.
things that happen only in the city. So
Mm.
your identity is shaped by all those little things.
Mm, mm, mm,
So just a simple example. So let's say you go to a cafe, right? So like
mm,
after work, you're just tired, you just want to hang out with your friends, so you just go have a drink in a cafe.
mm.
And that is something which perhaps somebody in the rural area may not be able to enjoy. So
Correct.
your identity, even by doing something so like you don't even have a second thought about that, just going to
Mm.
have a drink at a cafe, is
Yeah.
actually part of your urban identity. So
Mm.
my study was based on people who were living in cities, city
Right.
life. So
Okay.
yeah, that's basically
All
it.
right. Okay. So I think we'll dive right into the main things,
Juicy
which
part.
are the
Yes.
yeah, the juicy part. Yes. So basically, when you talk about dual burden syndrome or like mom's guilt, so these are the kind
Mm,
of dilemmas this working middle class women go through on a daily
yes.
basis. So
Yes.
how do you think we can solve this issue? Maybe you can talk a little bit about what is a dual burden syndrome, what is a mom guilt, and then how do
Mm,
you think we can go through this, maybe in a Malaysian context or maybe in an Asian context? Like
mm.
how do you think we can solve this issue?
Yeah, thanks. So basically, the dual burden syndrome is when you are a mom
Mm,
and you are also a professional working person, right? So
right.
you have that stress, and then
Mm,
you have the home stress. So that
mm,
would be the dual burden. And it's funny because I don't see why men shouldn't be having that also, but
true.
they're not. Yeah, they can, like they can study and they can go to work and they can get married and you wouldn't know the difference. It's just like
Correct.
one straight line.
Yeah.
But for a woman, the moment she finishes studying and she starts working, and the moment she wants to have a family, oh my goodness, like the 200 decisions that she has to make, like, do
Yes.
I continue with this job? Can I get
Mm,
pregnant? This and that. So
mm,
the dual burden is specifically for women. That would
mm.
be it. And what was your second question, Tammy?
Ah, the second one was mom's guilt.
Mom's guilt, yes.
Yeah.
So the mom's guilt comes in because society tells us that we have to be good moms, right? And we
Mm,
want to be good moms as well. So the moment you leave the home and leave your child with a daycare, or leave your
mm,
child with a maid, a domestic helper, or leave your child with maybe the child's grandparents, the guilt comes in.
mm,
How could I do that? I'm such a bad mom. I'm leaving my child and I'm going to work.
mm,
I'm enjoying a cup of coffee at the office. How could I do that? My baby could be crying at home, that
mm,
kind of thing. So that
mm,
is mom's guilt. And sometimes narratives don't help. So, for example, those who are homemakers will be able to identify with this as well. The narrative that says that, oh, when your child fell down and hurt his hand, were
mm.
you there? Or
Right.
are you coming back 8 hours later and then
Mm,
trying to look into it? So that immediately adds the guilt. Oh my goodness,
correct.
I should be there, when my child fell, and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that mom guilt is something that really haunts a lot of women who are
Mm,
trying to battle this dual burden thing.
mm.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Okay. So
Mm.
basically, why is there? I mean, this thing just came up to me. Like, why is there no dad's guilt?
Exactly. Exactly. I totally agree with you. I don't mind going on a demonstration with a placard. Like, there should be. They
Yeah.
should be
Correct.
there when the child falls as well. They should be
Yeah.
there when something happens to the
I
child.
mean, when it comes to admitting the love for their kids, I don't think they would back down and say like, yeah, maybe I love my child like 10% lesser than my wife,
Mm,
but
exactly.
somehow they don't have the guilt of not being there or like not much, perhaps not to the
Yes.
extent of to the ladies.
Yes, definitely. And because they enjoy this thing called the breadwinner's role. So the
Mm,
breadwinner's role is typically, traditionally for the men. Okay, so the
right.
woman is the one who is expressive. So she's
Yeah.
the one who's supposed to be with the child. So because they enjoy that breadwinner's role,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, they get
That goes
scot
back
free.
to the gender roles again, isn't it? But the problem is right now, the women are not just doing the traditional gender role of housekeeping and taking care of the kids anymore. They're also working.
Yes.
right? And sometimes the work is not because, okay, there are like women who they thrive in a career, they need to give work to their brain, and they want to do something, they want to contribute. And there are
Mm,
papers to say, women who work actually have lesser depression levels compared to like full-time housewife, because there are
yes,
some avenues for them to to use their creativity and like to contribute, to feel like they are
yes,
contributing something.
yes.
But
And they're
when
using
it,
the other half of the brain that's, into like, yeah, those kind of
correct,
skills.
yeah. And the thing is, when it comes to now, when they are both working, when they are both contributing financially to their household, but and yet there's the when it comes to this dual burden syndrome and this mom's guilt is always on the women again.
Yes,
So how do you
yes.
think we can solve this?
Okay. Um, there are many ways. I'd like to suggest, actually, I don't mind picking this up later as well, but yeah, I could
Right.
start now.
Yeah.
I would suggest that firstly, the woman needs to know that she is doing the right thing. I think a lot of women, they hesitate with this guilt, because of the guilt. So
Mhm.
they turn out very hesitant, they turn out very unsure. So when they
Right.
are at the office, they're thinking about the kid. And then when they go home,
Mm.
they're thinking about office work. So
Right.
that's why, like when you look at jokes, all these jokes that go on also on social media, like the woman is always positioned in such a way that she's the one who's not sure of herself because she's doing this and she's doing that. So she's given that role where she's like just not sure. She's just doing it half here and half there and all that.
Mm.
So I think women start with telling themselves, you know what? I need this for the family. I need to work, and yet I'm going to be a damn good mom when I
Right.
get home. That
Yep.
kind of thing. So I think once she can reach that level, that would really help a lot of things. That would be number
Mm.
one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, sometimes I feel, okay, so I know if there are any men who listen to this, they'll be really very happy.
Right.
Sometimes, just sometimes, okay, very rarely, sometimes I think women tend to leave the fathers out of the picture.
Mm.
I've come across, like in my interviews and in my reading, I've come across women who like, oh no, 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 I won't ask them to do it. They don't know how to do it. I'll do
They
it.
decide
I'll do
themselves
it.
they're not going to be good at it. Mm.
Exactly. So if the husband wants to change the diapers, no, 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 you don't do it. You don't know how to do. You're doing it wrongly.
Correct.
So guess
Correct.
what? I will do it.
They don't know how
So
to do. If they're doing it wrongly, teach them.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or you need to involve them even if they're doing it wrongly. Never mind. That's the only way they're going to learn,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, I
So
don't think the women suddenly got some sort of like, superpowers where they just know how to do things,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So in these very rare cases, I really recommend women to get the fathers involved.
Right.
So I feel that they don't do that enough. So again, it
Mm.
goes back to social media, you go back to advertisements. I mean, you just watch TV and you look at the ads that come out and they're trying to show you that, oh, this glow washes your
Correct.
dishes really well. And who will be
Right.
holding the glow and doing the
Oh yeah,
dishes?
there's still
The
a
woman.
stereotype. Yeah, when it comes to household chores, it's still the women who comes into the
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
advertisements. Yeah. Mm.
So I feel that apart from trying to assert themselves, women
Mm.
within themselves first, and I think
Mm-hmm.
the next thing is they need to have this conversation with the guy and say that I think you need to be involved. Never mind, you're doing it wrong, but I think we need to have you more into this. So those would
Correct.
be two of the things that I would
Mm.
suggest. Yeah, that would
Mm.
really help to break things.
Correct.
Like
I mean,
like, have you heard like the prenatal classes? The
yeah.
woman goes on her own. I
Correct.
think the husband go, or
Yes.
like when the woman goes for like the PTA meeting in school. I think husbands need to go. Yeah, so things like that. I think they should
Correct.
include the men. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like that is like on a lower level. And also, I think when it comes to policies as well, there should be some sort of an overhaul to don't make the women feel very burdened,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, it sometimes it's astounding as to why when it comes to nurturing and taking care, it's the same. I mean, apart from the whole feeding part,
Mm, mm.
every other job for the baby can be done by both genders.
Yes.
Am
And
I right? I
even
mean,
the
like,
feeding,
I'm
even
not
feeding, the milk can be put in bottles, right?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't
Yes,
see
yes,
any reason why it has to be the mom. I mean, even when they decide, okay, let's have a daycare center, right? The
mm,
daycare center
mm,
has to be somewhere nearby the mom's working place.
yes,
Or, why can't, I mean,
yes.
why is that the automatic thing that you think about? Why
Assumption,
does
yes.
it have to be the mom, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's
And I
like a
think,
universal thing. Yes, it's a
yeah, it has to be a
universal thing.
universal thing. I think it's, I mean, is it too much to ask at this point? I don't know. But I
Mm.
think need to start making steps towards it, at least.
Definitely. Definitely.
And I think the first point that you mentioned was very interesting about how you decide for yourself that you are going to be a good mom, about, you're going to do your best, right? I think I
Mm.
was just reading an article earlier at the Harvard Business Review, and about how they say just be a good enough mom,
Mm.
because it
Yes.
doesn't matter after a certain level about how close you are going to get with your child. So you don't have
Yes.
to sacrifice every single thing, your own health, your own leisure time, just so that you can do everything. But at the same
Yes.
day, I think at one point it just becomes a surplus. The connection with your child is still going to be there, even if you do the bare minimum, the bare essentials,
Exactly. And I
right?
feel that modern moms, especially in the middle class level, they
Mm-hmm.
tend to focus a lot on things that they can do for the child instead of actually spending time with the child. So, for
Mm,
example, when my daughter was young, I was mixing with a group that wanted to get the right brand of pampers, diapers, the
correct.
right milk,
Mm,
and then the right play school, and then the right, like toys to help them to enhance their understanding. So they were looking into all those commercialized values of how a child should get the best instead of
yes,
like, ah, yeah, never mind, just spend time with the kid and that
yes,
would be so much more meaningful. Yeah,
correct.
so that's another thing of the middle class. I find that
Mm,
they tend to focus a lot on these specialities,
mm.
which is really, if you compare to those who like not looking into that, it's so much better to just spend time with the child.
But then
Really
again, it
spend.
is harder now thanks to social media, because
Yes.
you end up comparing, and then you end up
Yes.
feeling, short, like, oh, I'm not doing this for my child, or look at this mom who seems to be great, who seems to be like killing it in every aspect of her life, and
Yes.
then you feel like, oh my God, I'm not doing enough, or why
Yes.
can't I be like her? That's going to
Yeah.
be difficult as well.
Yes. And the current phenomenon that I see like working mothers have in the middle class category, especially, is the breastfeeding. So that has
Mm,
become like a very important criterion to be a good mom. And fair enough,
right.
the breast milk is important. But I find that some mothers, like in the office, they find it really difficult. They have to go to the pump room, they have to
Yes,
do that, they put it in the fridge, and then they have to come back, and then they have to do their job, and then later they have to take it home by a certain time because it can only last a certain while out of the fridge. And you know
correct.
what, if there's a jam, so like so many other things are also associated with just giving the child the breast milk. So, and I
Correct.
find again the women are the ones carrying that load. Like the
Yes.
dad can
Yeah.
come home late and okay, never mind. But yeah,
Yeah.
the mom needs to get right smack on time. So
Correct.
yeah, so that's part of the thing.
Mm. And
Yeah.
when it comes to personal leisure time, like,
My favorite topic, yes.
like how moms are not able to, sometimes they feel guilty to actually
Mm,
just go out and have a cup of coffee for themselves, or to spend time for themselves. They
yes.
feel like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. Uh,
Yes.
and I'm leaving it with the dad, if he's going to be okay, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
and then you've interviewed a couple of women, and they don't seem to even understand what it means by me
yes.
time.
Yes, they don't. And when I asked them for leisure, this was the best part of my research actually, because I wanted to see how they thought about the topic. And when I
Correct.
asked them about leisure, do you know some even said, "What's that?" Like
Right.
literally, like, okay, what do you mean by leisure? So that means like they didn't even know, like, what leisure was. And so, for example, some would say things like, oh, when I water the plants, or when I go and do my grocery shopping, and I had to very gently tell them that no, going for grocery shopping and watching the plants is not what I meant by leisure. So you had to like try to unpack it more for them to make
Mm,
them
mm.
understand that leisure means time where you just relax and do something that you like. So I had to clearly
For your
define
own personal
what
fulfillment.
leisure. Yes, can you imagine? I had to do that. And very few had time for leisure. Very few. I think like out of 30, like maybe only five. And that
Why
out
do
of
you
the
think is
five, yeah, would be only two or three. Yeah.
Why do you think that happens? Do you think that they feel like they don't need to, they can't make the time?
Mm, I think it goes back to your first few questions. You asked about the dual burden and
Mm.
you asked about the mom's guilt.
Yes,
Yes, I
yes,
feel it's very closely related to that. Just like you said, like if they go out, let's say for a swim, or let's say they go
mm,
out to play a game or go out to
yeah,
watch a movie, they'll be thinking that, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I
mm,
should be home with the kid. Like every waking moment that is not at the office needs to be at home with the
mm,
kids.
mm,
So
mm,
I
mm.
think that is the reason. Yeah,
I
that's
think
one.
one of the problems is because they make it in a way that selflessness is a virtue already at this point. And I don't think
Yes.
that is right.
Yep.
I mean, it's great to do things for your family. I mean, it's important to love your family and sometimes do things, and sometimes you may need to sacrifice a couple of things, but that shouldn't be
Mm.
a whole being of living. Like, choose to be selfless all every single day at every moment.
Yes, yes. And I'm really glad that today's focus, like maybe COVID helped, I don't know, but I
Mm,
find that today's focus is on wellness,
right.
and if you just read like what's happening, like people are actually talking about how you need to be actually okay so that you
Mm,
can function well. So if you want to be a good mom or if you want to be a good person at the office, then
right.
maybe you should actually have time for yourself to
Correct.
recover and refresh so that you can function effectively. So
Correct.
I'm so glad that those kind of stories or those kind of narratives are actually happening today, where
Mm,
people are focusing on how you should be well. The wellness aspect is coming in, which is
mm,
very closely connected to leisure. Yeah, time to
correct.
just do your own thing and just to find that space. And yeah, I think that I'm not sure. I cannot generalize, but
Mm,
I find that again, maybe because of social media, I don't know, but I
mm-hmm.
find that women in America, they somehow are able to do that, like working mothers
Correct.
in the US, somehow
Mm-hmm.
they find that I find that they have time to do a lot of other things, maybe because they post it up often, so I
Mm,
tend to associate that they actually have time to do that. I don't know whether just
correct.
posting up for the sake of it, but yeah, I find that maybe in certain countries women get to do that, but in Malaysia, yeah, we need to catch up.
I think it's also about the Asian context of it, right? Like, what if you constantly post things about you doing things by yourself? You might get flack for that as well.
Yes,
So what are you
yes,
doing outside without taking care of your
yes,
kid? You know?
yes, that's right. So what women tend to do is that maybe they take a picture with the kid,
Yes.
like going to the park, oh, I went for a run and then here's with my kid, okay, there's a
Yeah.
Wimpy there. So
Correct.
that helps, yeah. Then you
Mm.
find that there's no flag. But you're right, if they post it on their own, or better still with their colleagues,
Mm.
like going out for a dinner with my colleagues, and yeah, you will get comments like,
Or go out
oh,
on a holiday even.
oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So that's a biggie. So I find it, like you
Mm.
said, in our society, Asian society, we tend to stereotype the woman's role even a whole lot more.
Mm.
And yeah, so that's the downside of it.
But I also
Mm.
feel like things are changing, which is great because I think uh, as someone, okay, maybe yeah, I was someone who came from pretty rural area, and then I was like
Okay,
urbanized maybe when I was a
okay,
teenager, right? And then
okay.
I started working, and then I started seeing my colleagues who are married, and they go out on girl trips. And that really
Mm.
blew my mind like 10 years ago. It's like, oh wow, okay, I'm so glad that people are doing this right now, because I think 10, 20
Mm.
years ago that is unheard of.
Yes.
For you to just leave your husband, leave your kids at home, and then you go on a trip with your girlfriends.
Yeah, that's right. So those are the plus points that things are actually happening today.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think again, because there's more awareness,
mm, mm, mm.
so women feel that, yeah, why not? There's nothing wrong with doing something
Correct.
like that. So that helps also.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also I'm like slightly deviating to that the another topic that you were studying about women in friendship, and I'm assuming that
Yes.
it's getting better nowadays.
Yes, it is. And I really enjoyed that also because I love to look at leisure. So I find that because of perception, so women were actually willing to forge friendships. And I found that from the time I did research, which is like maybe close to about 6 to 8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
compared to now, there
Mm-hmm.
is quite a difference. that
Yeah,
is
that's good
quite
to hear.
yeah. So I find that having friendship groups or like this girl circles, like just
Mm,
girlfriends going out and like having fun. So I find that that is also improving, and that's
mm,
really a very good thing also. So I'm not
correct.
sure what's happening in society that's propelling that, but yeah, I think that's a very, very good move. I mean, like Tammy, you and I have actually talked about this, like, oh, we
Correct.
should actually just go for a meal more often, and just
Yeah,
simple things like that. Yeah.
correct.
So I
Correct.
find that that's happening. So that's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, before I
Mm,
move on to the next question, I just would like to remind anyone who's watching that you can keep bringing the comments. I'm seeing a lot of comments actually, but if you have questions for Dr. Sally, please do send them in. And later on, before we end the show, I will probably project the questions for Dr. Sally to answer them. Okay. So my next question was, because you were interviewing your subjects, right?
mm.
Your group of
Research
samples.
participants. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Why do I say samples? Because
It's okay. Because you're
I
a
was,
scientist.
yeah, I was dealing with stuff like microbes, and then now you're talking about actual human beings. So when you were interviewing them, I mean, because I had the opportunity to actually read your thesis, it was amazing. I had to read the whole
So
thing.
shy. Yeah, I'm so shy.
It was really, really good. So you actually gave a couple of insight, your personal observations when you were interviewing them. Can you share a bit of that?
Oh, yes, I would love to. Yeah.
Mm,
I'm just so passionate about the research, even though it's like some time back. But thanks, Tammy, for asking.
mm,
There is this research technique called reflexivity. So that means
okay.
while we are listening to the people giving their answers, we are also supposed to be very observant. That means like we're
Correct.
supposed to see how they feel,
Mm,
what's like body language, like what are they looking like when they're talking about certain topics. And then, like, for example, it never happened to me, but
mm-hmm,
I've heard it happen to others. Like, if you find that they are getting a little bit stressed up about the topic, we are
mm,
advised to like stop and like go to the next question. So it didn't happen to me, but anyway,
correct.
yeah. So we have to look
Okay.
out for body language. So I found that when I first started the interview, they
Mm-hmm,
were they were having this vibe that I need to impress, like I
okay.
need to impress the researcher. I need to tell her, like, I do all these things and all that. So from the beginning, I just felt I needed to tell them that this is not looking for all those success points. This
Mm-hmm,
research is actually looking at how you really feel,
right.
and that I felt kind of like just brought the atmosphere down to a more relaxed mode. It wasn't
Mm-hmm,
this formal interview where they had to project themselves in a very positive manner, but they
correct.
could be actually very natural.
Mm-hmm,
And when they talked about things where they messed up, like they
right.
made a mistake or they did something wrong, I
Mm,
actually train myself to be very understanding, because I do.
okay.
I mean, I'm a mom myself,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just nodded, and sometimes I smiled, in a very nice, encouraging way. And Tammy, those little things like that really caused them to open up.
Right.
So they were free to talk about the mess ups in the office. Then they were free to talk about how, like, they forgot that the babysitter was not coming one day, and then they had to rush. So they
Mm-hmm,
were more willing to talk about the reality stuff instead of this
mm-hmm,
positive projection of
mm,
how good they were. So I really, really enjoyed that. And of course, like I said, when it came to the leisure part,
yeah.
and uh, and I could really see that they were struggling to find things that they could define as leisure. And so I gave examples like, watering the plants, and, going for grocery shopping. And one was very cute. She said that I sat in front of the TV, and guess what? The TV was watching me, so obviously, like, she was like half asleep, or,
Mm,
things like that. So I really found that the right approach in letting them just be themselves and to really talk,
mm-hmm,
really brought it down to a really, really different level, a very, very nice. It's like a girl talk thing, because
right.
I'm a working mother, they are working mothers, and they could really freely share.
Mm,
I really love that part. Yeah,
okay.
thanks for asking. Yeah, reflexivity is a great tool. Sorry, I don't want to go too much into research, but it's really great not to just look at their answers at the word level, but
Mm-hmm,
look at other things. Look at
mm,
how they're talking about it, the excitement that they have, or is
mm,
something that's frustrating that they are willing to share, to talk
mm,
about. Those are
mm-hmm.
great. those are great
I
parts.
think it also, I think based on what I understood reading from your thesis was the fact that it also became like a point of reflection for them,
Yes,
right? As to
yes,
how much they've done and what are the things they're actually going through. And it is actually a huge thing that they have been doing so
yes,
far, right?
yes, yes.
And
Thanks
it's
for that.
sad because they had for, I mean, it had to come to a point where a researcher had to come into your house and ask a question for you to realize you've been doing such a great job.
Yes, yes. See, and you saw that, you saw that. And I had one mother, she was so cute. She said that, can you interview my friend? Because
Hmm.
I want my friend to have the sense of awareness that I got after this process.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so can you, so like you said, that she was like, oh, yeah, wow, So,
Mm.
yeah, great.
That
That's
was
great.
so. How do you think that? I mean, I guess it goes back to leisure again. I guess, I mean, for them to be aware that, okay, I've done a lot. I need some sort of a time out to reward myself. And that thing is not going to come. That self awareness is not going to come if they don't reflect on how much they've been doing. If they are keep looking, they keep looking at comparisons and like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing enough.
Yes, yes, yes.
Because as long as you
That
do that, you'll never stop.
Yeah, that's right. Recently there was this, I'm really lousy with names. There was this famous song that talked about how you are enough.
Mm.
Okay, I can't remember her name. Yeah, but
Okay.
it's things like that which tell people that, you know what, you've already done enough. And you
Correct.
need to be kind to yourself. You need to love
Mm.
yourself. You need
Mm.
to spend some time like enjoying yourself, that kind of thing. Yeah. So that needs to come about really in a serious way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes having a close knit circle of friends is good because the moment you start isolating yourself and your life just revolves around work or home, there's
Mm.
nobody's going to be there as like this third person point of view giving like, what, you look tired, or like, I think you need a time out. So I think it
Yes.
all comes back to the fact that the women needs to have some sort of their own personal space and personal social circle as well,
Mm.
and not
Yes.
to just devote all their time and life into these two aspects.
Yes. That's right. And one thing that I observed from the lives of the women that I did
Mm.
research on, the only thing that they could define as non-work, that means apart from childcare and non-work, was to visit their relatives' homes during school holidays.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
seemed to be a very regular feature, right? So they
Mm-mm-mm.
thought that visiting their relatives' homes during school holidays was like, that's my leisure. So
Right.
again, to come back to explaining that, okay, so the reason that you were going was, and then like
Mhm.
when they really found out that, oh yeah, that was just like more like obligatory, like, I need to take my kids to see their cousins, so I need to see my this auntie or that uncle and that kind of thing.
Correct.
So it's fine that you are going, but I was trying to get them to understand that no,
Right.
what I meant by leisure is yeah, yeah,
It's cute, but I kind of sad as well to think that they don't even understand what it means to have time for themselves.
yes, yeah. So the good part is, like we talked earlier, is that the friendship circles seem to be growing. So
Mm.
at least in terms of that element, I find that people are willing to be a little bit more open to the idea of friendship circles. So that's a
Correct.
really good thing. Yeah,
Correct.
that's one
Yeah.
of the positive things.
Yeah. And I think speaking about leisure time, do you think the husbands have the same issue?
No, they again,
Mm.
they are more free with their
Mhm.
time. They get to say things like, I got to stay late at the office. But if you really go check, the late at the office means like going for badminton or going for football or going for a drink. So for them, leisure is part of work. It's
Mm.
not so much the home. The leisure part is usually attached to the work life. So that
Right.
means if I'm late at the office, it equals means that I can go for a drink, I can go for a
Correct.
game, and then I come home to shower, and then I'm at home. So
Mm.
unfortunately, that's the indication. Of course, there are a few exceptions. I found that there are a few men who actually take the whole family out for leisure. So that means like they actually go for a movie. Now, all this is of course pre-COVID. Yeah, of course after COVID, like it's a completely different story. But
Correct.
yeah, they actually like go for a movie, they go for a meal. So it's there are a few men that enjoy leisure in a family way,
Mm-hmm.
but they are a minority. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I think which brings us to the term conjugal roles,
Mm,
right? So
interesting.
don't you
Yes,
think if the conjugal role is actually 50-50, both parties would have time for leisure?
yes. So
Would you
conjugal
care to
role.
explain first what conjugal role means to our viewers?
Okay, sure. Okay, all these fancy words, right? So
Yeah.
conjugal roles basically means the roles that a husband and wife share in the house. So if it's a shared conjugal role, that
Mm-hmm.
means you and your partner have it equal. But if
Correct.
it's not shared, then that means somebody is doing all the work on their own. So
Correct.
it's either shared or it's segregated. So
Mm.
hopefully, we are moving into a society where there will be more shared conjugal roles. So
Okay.
the traditional way of looking at it is housework
Mm-hmm.
and childcare. So basically,
Yeah.
these are the two things that happen the most at home: housework
Mm-hmm.
and childcare. So again, history shows us that both burdens have fallen on the woman, and so the woman has the responsibility when she gets home from work to look into the food, look into the meal plan, and then to actually also take care of the kids. So mostly the woman does it. So hopefully
Correct.
we are coming into a place where it is shared.
Mm.
Like I said, there is a minor group, there is a minority group of men who are actually spending time with the children. And good news, there are men who can cook.
Mm.
Yay! So yeah, so the shift is happening, but
Mm.
it's very yeah, it's a very small
It's very
shift.
small. Also, I think we need to point out the fact that yes, some partners tend to share the household chores, but the mental load still falls on the women,
Yes, that's
right?
right.
They
That's
have to instruct, okay, can you please sweep the floor, or can you please load the laundry in the washing machine? Because
uh,
that is actually not helping. Because at the end of the day, all the organizing, all the segregation of work is still happening in one person's mind.
yes, that's
I
right.
think the other partner should also, the bar shouldn't be too low. What I'm trying to say is the bar shouldn't be too low. Oh, look at me, I'm washing the dishes, I'm
Mm,
helping. It should be proactively trying to take care of the house because it's your house as well. So you don't
yes,
have to wait for someone to tell you to do things.
exactly.
You
It's
know?
your own home, right?
Yeah,
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 yeah. Academically, the word that we use is called invisible work. So the
right.
woman tends to take on all the invisible work, and it's like you said, the planning, the preparation, the telling, the executing, and the follow up, even.
Yeah,
Like if something is not well done, like it's up to her to like, okay, Naman, she'll just go improve on it without saying anything. So like
correct.
everything, the entire invisible work is falling on her.
Mm,
So hopefully
mm,
that will change. Yeah, I like what you said. I think the men should realize that, hey, guess what? This is my home as well. So
correct.
why don't like I do the meal plan today? Like so
Mm,
actually go get the groceries and things like that. And today when we have like online facilities like Grab and Food Panda and things like that, where they can actually bring the groceries home
mm,
so that you can actually do it online. I think all these are ways to show the men that what they can be involved more. They don't
correct.
actually have to physically go to the market and things like
Mm,
that. It
mm-hmm.
gets sent home. So yeah, so I totally agree with you. So conjugal roles should be shared. Yes,
Yes.
should be shared.
Because I think half of the issues could be solved if the conjugal roles are shared. Two things
Yes,
basically. It's the conjugal roles and also the whole mom's guilt. I think that has to be
yes,
worked on as well. But I think
yes,
it's also like what you said. It or sometimes the fault also lies on the woman
yes.
because the woman feel like, oh, you're not doing good. I would do it better. They have this
Yeah.
whole perfectionist
Exclusive.
tendency or
Yes.
micromanaging tendency of like, you know what, I will do
Yes.
it for you.
Yes, yes. And unfortunately, there is truth to that.
Yeah.
I don't like it. Personally, I don't like it when people tend to generalize and say that, oh, women tend to be micromanagers. I don't
Mm,
like it.
mm,
But unfortunately, sometimes there is truth to that. I
yeah.
notice many women friends tend to do that.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's
mm.
it's like a vicious cycle. she micromanages, and then she says the husband doesn't help. And then when the husband wants to help, she says, no, you're not good enough. So she's back to
Mm.
micromanaging. And, it just
And then
kind of
she
like,
gets stressed out because she's doing everything.
exactly, exactly. So that conversation needs to happen. That conversation needs to happen with the husband and with the kids. And
Hmm.
she needs to let go and say, like, if they want to help, kind of like draw them in. Okay, come,
Right.
why don't you cook today? Never mind if the kitchen is a mess, but you do the cooking today. See how it
Mm.
feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things like that.
Okay.
Mm.
So I think I have a comment by Davis Tree.
Okay.
Okay, so I think this is in regards to, when you said about how women in America they seem to be more open about, taking time out for themselves, sharing more on social media about how, look at me, I'm going out by myself and having trips out and things like that. So she says, maybe because in America it's a much more progressive society and they believe in gender equality more. But she thinks that Malaysia is still a far-fetched idea for women to even establish basic right. What What's more, this idea of wellness, especially in the lower socioeconomic group.
Mm. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I agree with that to quite an extent. But I have also found in the US, because I have quite a few international affiliations with women, and I
Hmm.
find that there are women in the US who are, believe it or not, in a way more backward than us.
Mm.
There are
Yeah, I won't be
those. There
surprised.
are those. Yeah, it's not that they are progressive in every sense of the word. There are
Mm.
many who think that the wife's role should be at home and you shouldn't even be working. So there are middle class women there who have that very strong mindset also. So that's happening there. For
Mhm.
us, I think that actually we are, yes, we are backward in that sense, but we are actually in a way quite progressive if you look at other countries, like maybe in Asia. I
Mhm.
think we are doing quite okay.
Mm.
Like if you look at certain countries like maybe Vietnam, or maybe Thailand, look at some of these other Asian countries where you find that the woman is not so forward that the way that the Malaysian woman is. But
Mhm.
you are right, because like if you find, like if we are not talking about M40, if we are talking about B40, then yes, then
Mm.
they would have those issues to deal with, and yeah, to talk
I
about,
think I
and
think
it's
it goes
hard.
back to the urban identity, like what you mentioned, right? I mean, their experiences are different. I don't think they have this whole social circle for them to, to uplift each other.
Yep,
Probably the
yep.
education level would not be, too high as well.
Yes. And
Mm.
they won't have that awareness because the education level is not that high, so they won't have that awareness. And
Mm.
I find that, but I find that they don't really carry the guilt the way that middle class women do. That's the funny thing I notice
Oh, okay.
from my reading. Yes, because they have to work. There's no
Right.
choice. There's
Right.
no choice that, oh, I want to stay at home and take care of my kids. The husband's salary is not enough. And in
Mm.
many of their cases, the woman is the one who is actually the breadwinner. Some of
Right.
the men, either their jobs are not so good, or it's more project based. If like there's a construction, then the
Mm.
husband gets a job. If there's no construction, the husband has no job. So I find
Correct.
that for the B40 group, I find that because they are working, they have to work. So they don't have the guilt of like, oh, I'm not at home to take care of my children. For them, it's
Mm.
like, there's no choice.
There's no
There's no
choice. Yeah.
ways about it. Yeah, I have to work, I have to feed the family. And so like, yeah, so that's why their world is completely different actually. So
Mm.
their identity issues very, very different
Mm.
from the class
I feel like
identity.
some of the grievances come from first world problems. When you're privileged enough to think about certain things, you feel like, you have a
Yeah.
whole different set of problems come with the
Yes.
privilege, I guess.
Yes, I
Mm.
totally agree. I totally agree. And sometimes we have a problem with being defined as privileged. I
Ah,
love
yes.
this conversation that again, Tammy and I know, we have friends who do podcasting, and
Yes.
and I love conversations we have had about the word privilege. So
Mm.
we think it's a bad word, we think it's a dirty word, but I think we need to accept the fact that yes, we are privileged in many ways, but what are we doing with the privilege that
Mm.
makes the difference? That's what we need to get at. So instead of
Mm.
fighting over like, oh, I'm privileged or I'm not privileged, instead of trying to nuance that, I think we should go into like, yeah, so if I'm privileged to be in this position, so what am I doing to like bring change?
Mm.
That kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then Jane has another question.
Yay, yes, do ask.
Jane says, for a lot of women, leisurely time and personal space is riddled with guilt because they are told it's not productive, right?
Mm, yes. So it goes back again to that whole cycle of like a woman's thing. And
Mm.
because a woman usually doesn't, who, as a person who doesn't think of herself, right? Whereas the
Yeah,
man, like they get to and is perfectly fine. But the
yeah,
moment you're a woman and you say that you're thinking about going out and having a good time and you're leaving your kids at home, it's like, how could you,
yeah.
that kind of thing.
It's
Yeah.
not about thinking about
So
yourself already. It's the extreme. It's like you're being
yes,
selfish.
yes. So it's
Mm.
all look at it as like a scale. So the lower scale is that you're actually going to work. Okay, guilt number one. Guilt number two, let's say it's a job that you enjoy. Oh, you shouldn't. You should be hating your job because you should be running home immediately after work ends, right? Okay.
Correct.
Then guilt number three is that you're even thinking about leisure. Okay, that's the next level. And then
Mm.
the fourth one is that you are actually going and enjoying yourself. And then the next level is that you're doing it often, and then the
Mm.
next level is that you're actually having friends that are not
Mm.
family, and you're going and doing leisure time often with these people. So you see, it's all different scales. So the guilt gets worse, as
Right.
if you don't nip it in the bud. If you don't nip it
Mm.
in the bud. Yeah.
And
So
another question from Jane. How do you think the current pandemic has affected the gender roles of middle class women?
interesting question. I really
Mm.
need to do research on this. I haven't, but yeah, top of my head, just from my
Mm.
observation, I
Mm.
personally think it's swinging into two extremes.
Right.
The very good extreme and unfortunately the very bad extreme. The
Mm.
very good extreme is the fact that men are realizing that, oh my goodness, my wife is doing so much because
Okay.
everyone's stuck at home, so he actually sees it and he's actually trying to solve, he's
Mm.
actually trying to, okay, how can we work at this together, that kind of thing. All right, so I find that it's doing good in that way. And because the woman and the man, with the assumption that both have jobs that they can continue online at home, yeah, based on
Mm.
COVID,
Mm-hmm.
I find that then the possibility of shared conjugal roles becomes better. But that's the rosy part. But it's also swinging into the other end where tensions are aggravated because everybody is home.
Right.
Everybody is at home.
I mean, the numbers are
So,
saying, right? I mean, the domestic violences are
yes,
increasing, things like that. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. And I find, right, I mean, that's my trump card. Actually, I would mention that at the end. My trump card is that men and women are not having those important conversations. They may be husband and wife. And forgive me for being crude, on live, but sometimes, like, husbands and wives, they can share their naked bodies,
Mm.
but I find that they can't share what's really in their hearts.
Oh, that's harder.
That I, yeah, so I find that they hide the reality of what they're going through. And I find that men and women don't share often enough. They don't have those difficult conversations often enough. I
Difficult
find
conversation, heart to heart conversations.
yes.
Mm.
Yes. For example, let me give you an example. Let's say the husband says that he tells the wife, I love the way that you cook ayam masak merah. I just
Mm.
love it. Now, that's a
Mm.
compliment, right?
Yeah.
But what if he's saying it on a day when she's dead tired? What if he's saying
Mm.
it on a day when she has come home exhausted and he gives that statement? So we have to
Mm.
ask ourselves, is that a compliment? Or could it be a time when she should just turn around and say, you know what, I'm just too tired today. Can we just order KFC?
Right.
So is the woman willing to have that kind of conversation? And is the man
Willing to
willing to
listen.
receive? Yes, to receive that. So forgo your
Mm.
ayam masak merah for today. Your wife's really tired.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just think about how she feels, she's like really exhausted.
Mm. But
So
I think
those
that's
kind of,
also that opened another can of worms about, you're the husband and you've been together for years. Wouldn't you be able to at least read your wife, like, can't you see that she's tired, perhaps, those
yeah.
kind of things that comes out sometimes,
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
right.
Mm.
So I find that those kind of conversations need to happen more. And it's the
Mm-mm.
same with the kid. I mean, I'm sorry for bringing children into the picture, or I've heard
Mm.
this often enough where they say that, okay, your son, okay, XYZ, okay, let's give him a name. Okay, Joshua. Joshua was asking for you to help him with his tuition.
mm,
Okay. So is the wife ready to say that, but I think you should help,
right.
you know? And she should also speak to the son and say that, you know what, I think Appa or Daddy will really do a good job as well. Mommy's busy, mommy's tired. Can
Mm,
you let dad like help you out today? Those kind of conversations, instead of
yeah,
just saying that, oh, my son has asked me to help. So okay, never mind, I'm dead tired. Never mind,
but
I've
I'll
had
do
no
it.
leisure for the past 6 months, but my
Mhm.
son is asking me to help. Let me go help him. So
Mm,
I think, yeah. So that's why I said the conversations need to happen a whole lot more. Yeah.
right. Oh, I love this. Another question. Uh, so Desi is asking, Dr. Sally, if you can tell one thing, just one to our women, what would you say?
I like that statement which Tammy mentioned right in the beginning. I completely
Oh,
forgot about Susan Faludi. Could you quote
okay.
that again? Yeah, could I hear
Oh,
her
yeah, sure.
again? Yeah.
Feminism's agenda is basic. It asks women to be free to define themselves.
Yes. So even some women struggle with the word feminism because they
Mm,
think feminism, it can mean a whole of, it means that we are bashing up the men and, things like that. So I won't use the word feminism.
mm,
But I would say that, yes, be free to be you. I would
mm,
say be free to be you. Find out who you are, what kind of person you are, what you like, what you do, and let that define you. Because when you let that define you, everything kind of, I wouldn't say falls into place. It's not so
mm,
perfect and rosy, but everything else also gets aligned to who
mhm,
you are. So
mm,
that you can have the perspective, you can have your likes, you can have your dislikes, you can have goals, you can have visions, and it's from you. And guess
right.
what? The better that you are, husbands are supposed to like you better, and kids find you more fulfilled, and actually
Mm,
you're better for everybody. So,
right.
yeah. Thanks for that quote. Thanks for the question, and thanks for that quote. Yeah, I really like that. Be who you are. Be free to
Yeah,
be
I
who.
think I think at the end of the day, that's the basic. Yeah, I totally agree with what you said about how feminism is getting bad rap these days. But I think that made me to be even more adamantly using the word feminism because
Okay,
hey, look at
okay.
me, I'm a good example of a feminist. You know. So
Yes,
yeah, and
yes.
at the end of the day, feminism is basically letting women to do what they want to do
Yes. And it's
and not
all for
bashing
good.
them for their choices. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's all for good. Sometimes when people think that, let women do what they want, they get all these nightmarish concepts of women, going around in like witches or something like that. No, but it's all for common good. The men
correct.
also benefit. So
Yeah.
yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I think I want to end the session with one last question. I think the question itself is like a conclusion to our
Okay.
session. So how do you think patriarchy and feminism will affect the next generation? Could we hope for a more balanced and unbiased gender roles in the future? But I personally think it's going towards the right direction,
Mm,
So what do you
yes.
think?
I totally agree. To
Mm.
start off with, patriarchy will always be there.
Yeah,
We
of course.
can't
Mm.
run away. I think when I was much younger, I had ideals that, oh, we will overcome and, we will be fair and equal. Okay, so now not so young anymore. So patriarchy will always
Become
be
more
there.
realistic after
But
that.
yes, but it's how we maneuver and
Mm.
manage it so that we come out on top as well. So that women can also have a say
Mm-hmm.
in how life is run. So, and I think it goes back, in
Mm-hmm.
conclusion, it goes back to the woman herself. She
Mm-hmm.
needs to be sure of who she is and to find herself in that sense. And number two, be willing to have a difficult conversation.
Right.
After yourself, with those that you love, like those simple examples that I gave just now, be willing to have those conversations. If Tammy, do you have time for another example?
Sure,
Is that
yes.
time?
We
Yeah,
have,
okay. I
yes.
just want to share these two examples really quickly, really short ones, because they are real, and they happened during my interview process. I,
Mm,
I interviewed two managerial women, okay,
right.
women who are holding decision-making jobs, all right, they're both managers, and they are very into women empowerment, okay, they're
Mm,
so into women empowerment. But guess what? Um, I got to know, because I know them personally, I got to know that one of them couldn't put her mother-in-law in place. Okay, her mother-in-law was running her household,
right.
and she just continued to allow that. and the other woman was having a very difficult son, and the son would be throwing tantrums, and he would be having his say at home, and he was a little kid, he was just like 7 or 8, okay, and he
Right.
was having tantrums and all that, and she didn't want to address that. She just let him be. And I don't know what her thinking was. Maybe she thought he would outgrow it. I don't want to judge. I don't want to go there. But what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to say is, at the forefront, you can actually be championing women's empowerment, like, the banging table kind, like, yeah, women power. But
Yes.
at home, other things could be happening.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel it comes back to the two things that we were talking about. One is find yourself, who you
Right.
are.
Mm.
And number two, live it. Live it
Mm.
at home. Because the home is where you are defined by the most. So
Correct.
if you can overcome those obstacles that you face at home, the
Mm-hmm.
outside part is usually a whole lot easier.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. But I think
That,
sometimes when you were talking about the two examples that you gave, right, I sometimes it might be a case of them not even realizing that they're letting
mm,
this happen.
mm,
They might truly believe in that, in championing women's right and stuff like that, and they, I think there's a disconnect between what they see, and somehow they turn a blind eye, or some sort of
yes.
denial happening there,
Yes.
that they don't
And
want
that
to
goes
address it.
Yeah,
Mm,
and that goes back to not knowing themselves, not being true to
correct,
themselves.
correct,
That
correct.
kind of thing.
Yes.
So it's related. But yeah, thanks for that insight. Yeah.
Okay. But thank you so
Okay.
much, Doctor, for like spending an hour. Yeah, exactly. An hour with us
Yeah,
on a
really? It's that
topic.
long? Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's 1 hour
Oh,
on a topic
thank
I
you,
think
Tammy.
you are very passionate in. I'm very passionate in as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And
Thank
I
you
hope
so much. Thank you
and
so
I hope
much.
like, those who are watching had a good time as well listening in.
Thank
I
you
think
so
maybe we
much. I
can
want
do
to
some.
say thank you to everybody who listened in and who made comments. Tammy, will I be able to see their comments later?
Yes. When
Oh,
you
okay,
go to
great.
my Facebook page, you will be able to see all the comments there.
Oh, that's great. I would love
Yes.
to be in touch.
Mr.
Yeah.
Daniel commented as well on YouTube. Mr. Daniel is
Okay.
Dr. Sally's husband, by the way.
Thank you, Tammy. Thank you for this lovely opportunity. I loved it, dear. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. And I'm glad we spoke about this. I mean, it's not, instead of just being a random chit chat at the kopitiam, it's like a proper medium so
Yay.
that someone else can learn from it as well. Because
Yes.
I've always loved listening and learning from you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Take
Doctor. Good
care.
night.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and that's it for this week's episode. I hope you guys learned as much as I did, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you so much, Miss Uma, for watching. Um, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks on another interesting episode, I hope. Good night and have a good weekend. Thank you, Jane.